Good morning, everybody. I thought we'd start, as we did last week, reciting the Heart Sutra. But it would appear we haven't got the prayer books here. So, no problem, we'll just do refuge and mandala offering. And then we'll do a meditation. Che dan so ki che nam la chan chu ba do dan ni kya su chi da ki jin so ki pe so nan ki ro la pen che san ge chu pa sho che dan so ki che nam la chan chu ba do dan ni kya su chi da ki jin ye ki pe so nan ki ro la pen che san ge chu pa sho che dang so ki che nam la chan chu bar du dan ni kyab su chi da ki chun nye ki pe son non ki ro la pen che san ge ju pa shu bu ge ye jia me to cha ri ra lin jie ne de gen ba di san ge zhen du me de wu wa gi zhe gong na na chen na ju pa ju 예당 구루라나 만달라 감내가 다야. So we're going to start with a little meditation in silence. We're going to repeat the meditation we did last week. So there might be some people who weren't here, so I'm going to explain just briefly. It's a very simple meditation, but at the same time, it's very effective, very beneficial. The meditation has 3 parts. In the first part, we just simply watch the breath. Become aware of our breathing process, inhaling and exhaling. So during 3 minutes, we watch the breath. Then later, when I hit the gong, in the second part, we imagine an image of Buddha in front of us. If we're not familiar with visualizing Buddha, we can think that simply in the space in front of us, light comes, a light which purifies us and inspires us. So in the second part, we just try and concentrate on this image of Buddha or light, purifying us completely. And in the third part, we imagine that this light dissolves into us, into our heart. And during the next 3 minutes, we visualize that we transmit this light from our heart in all the 10 directions to all beings. It's a very simple practice. Everyone can do it. And as I explained last week, it's something which really has a lot of benefits, and we should try and be aware of these benefits. Value the power of this practice. So we should try and use our thoughts, use our mind in a positive way, in a beneficial way. It's that same energy of our mind, the same energy of our thoughts, that as we don't use correctly, causes us so many problems. For example, in the first part of the meditation, just simply watching the breath. It's an effective method to calm our mind, calm our thoughts, calm the distractions in our mind. If we observe our normal mind and our thoughts, we can see that we don't have control over them. We're completely immersed in distraction, worries, concerns, emotions that come and go in our mind that agitate our mental state. And we don't have the capacity to control at all. So this first part of the meditation, observing the breath, is the perfect medicine to cure this problem which we all have. We know this because we can see in our lives that our mind is completely under the control of these dispersive thoughts, these distractions. We can see that we complicate our lives so much. It's not necessary. So this first part of the meditation is the medicine, the ideal medicine to cure this problem. And it's important to recognize that we have this problem. I have this problem, and I need to take this medicine. I need to find a cure. And as I mentioned last time, this medicine doesn't have any side effects. And the fact is that we constantly turn to medicines for any kind of problem we might have. Again and again, we search for a medicine to be able to sleep, or to be able to be more relaxed, or to stimulate our mind. And we know that these medicines have a lot of disadvantages. And even the doctors recommend not to take them too much. So this is the attitude we all have. It's just so easy to go to the chemist and try and find a quick solution to our problems. But these quick solutions often come with disadvantages. We might be able to find a short-term fix, short-term cure, but in the long term, it can bring us complications, side effects. So this meditation doesn't have any negative side effects at all. We don't need to go to the chemist, don't need to spend money, buy anything. We just use our thoughts, just use our mind in a healthy way, in a positive way. Then in the second part, when we visualize the image of Buddha radiating light, purifying us, we imagine that this light eliminates all negative experiences and all of our worries and concerns in our life right now. That might be something physical, an illness, or it could be something mental, anxiety or fear or depression. It could be an emotional problem. Whatever's worrying us, we think of that. Whatever is affecting us the most in our daily life. Imagine that this light enters us and cleans us completely, eliminates this problem. We can imagine this problem or problems as stains in our mind or in our body, which through this practice is completely cleaned, purified. So we should think that all the problems we're experiencing now, all the problems we're going to experience in the future, with this practice, we completely purify them. And we might think this is just some kind of fantasy or some sort of imagination, but it really is effective. And it's something which, if we study how our mind works, we can see that this method is ideal for curing all sorts of traumas, problems which we carry with us since a long time ago. So it's worthwhile being aware of the benefits. It's worthwhile being aware that it's like a medicine, that we have this problem, Our mind is polluted, is loaded with traumas and negative impressions, which causes so much suffering. They cause suffering now and in the future. And then now with this practice, we have the opportunity to carry out an interior cleansing. We can purify all of these problems. So we're going to do this during 3 minutes. And then the final part, the third part, we imagine that this Buddha image dissolves into us, into our heart. And we imagine our body and mind is completely purified, full of light. We feel that state of bliss, of clarity. And then in this third part, we transmit to others this energy. We can think of those beings who we're close to, the ones who we relate to in our daily life, the people here in this venue. And then we can go expanding further and further, transmitting this light, this purifying energy to all sentient beings. We can also imagine that it purifies the place, that the place becomes something very pure and clean. Not only here, but where we live, where we work, our friends, family, etc. We can think that with this meditation, we expand this energy and others receive it in the same way we have in the earlier part of the meditation. Whatever problems they have, whatever problems they're experiencing, each and every one of those beings, whatever's causing them the most pain, whether that be a physical problem, an illness, or economical problems, we imagine that with this light, we transmit this pure energy, alleviating them completely from all of their problems. We can imagine this light as something very intense, very powerful, expanding throughout the universe towards all sentient beings, whatever type of suffering they're experiencing. And it transmits to them this peaceful, happy, blissful energy. And this third part we should also see as a medicine we need urgently. Urgently, because the cause of all of our problems is the self-cherishing thought, grasping at the I, me, as the most important, the center of the universe. We constantly think, since beginning this time, we're habituated in thinking, I'm the most important. It's something we're thinking of constantly. What I want, what I need, what I don't want, what I don't need. Constantly working to try and fulfill this self-cherishing attitude. This attitude that I'm the most important, this ego. And this is the cause of all of our problems. And this we can understand perfectly from our own experience. If each person here, everybody here thinks like that, thinking I am the most important, the only thing we achieve is creating conflict with others. Because everyone's just looking out for themselves. Everyone's looking out for their own benefit. Now, the opposite attitude, we know, we can see, we've seen examples with holy beings, great teachers, or even ordinary beings just with a good heart who worry and are concerned about others. We know from our experience that altruistic attitude, wanting to benefit others, wanting to help others, is the source of happiness for oneself and others. So with this third part in the meditation, we try to destroy that self-cherishing attitude. And we imagine that our body, mind now is dedicated to the happiness of others, to transmit to others whatever it is they need, alleviating all of their problems and suffering. So becoming familiar with this attitude, with this thought, we start to see that the meaning of our life is to help others, to transmit happiness to others. And if we become habituated with this thought, this will destroy that self-cherishing thought, that ego. And the altruistic thought, which thinks of others as more important, and which leaves to one side the thought of I, this is the thought which is the source of happiness. Happiness for us and happiness for others. Isn't something that I'm just saying. It's something that we can prove through our experience. We can see many cases, people who practice the good heart, altruistic people, how they benefit others. And we know that when we have that attitude ourselves, it brings us great benefit, it brings us happiness, it brings us peace. So I wanted to emphasize the fact that this meditation we're going to do during 10 minutes is very simple, everyone can do, hasn't got any complications. At the same time, it's something very beneficial. And if we're aware of that, and we do it with mindfulness, it's something which is going to benefit us greatly, to us, and also benefit others, and it will benefit the world. So it's important to be aware of this. So whether this meditation is effective or not depends on our attitude. Depends on the energy, the enthusiasm we put into this. So if we contemplate the advantages, and we develop that interest, sincere interest from our side, then even though it's a short meditation, 10 minutes maybe, it's something very powerful. And if we repeat it, it's an easy practice, so we can become familiar with it, we can do it again and again. If we repeat it, slowly, little by little, it will become a habit. Little by little, the benefits are going to increase. And the opposite, negative aspects of our mind, the distracted mind, the delusions, the traumas, the negative karma and the imprints that we've been carrying since many past lives, along with the self-cherishing attitude, with the practice, with habit, they will decrease. And in the same way, as they begin to decrease, the quality of our life will improve. In fact, the quality of our life depends on our interior state, on the state of our mind. We value a lot, we put a lot of emphasis on external objects, a nice house, good conditions, looking for a nice companionship, people who we like to be around, accumulating wealth, having a good reputation, fame, etc. We put a lot of interest in this. And at the end of the day, it doesn't work. We can have a lot of wealth, we can be very rich, have a lot of things, but our minds continue full of problems. On the other hand, if we do this interior work, working on our mind, if we do this interior work, everything will improve without effort. And as I mentioned, we don't have to believe this just because I'm saying it. If we observe our mind, if we watch how our mind works, we'll see that it's like this. When our mind is in a healthy, positive state, our life becomes something very beautiful. Our relationships become something positive. And we enjoy ourselves. We can enjoy our possessions, our material wealth. If our mind is agitated in a state of confusion, even if we enjoy great material wealth, we have many friends, even if we have great reputation, fame, if our mind is agitated, confused, we have problems wherever we go, in every moment, wherever we are. So here we should be aware of this. The quality of our life depends on our interior state, on our mind. To improve our mind, to improve our interior state, our being, depends on us. We have to find an effective practice ourselves and carry it out. There's no one who's going to do this for us. There's no one who's going to transmit that inner state that we're looking for. So that was a little bit about the meditation we're going to do. We're going to do like 10 minutes of meditation. And then if anyone here's got experience in meditating, it's good to remember that the principal tool that we're using here in the meditation is mindfulness and awareness. We direct our mind to this practice. From the beginning, we know the instructions. At the start, we're going to be meditating on the breath, then we're going to be visualizing white purifying light, and then transmitting that to others. So this is the technique, this is the object of meditation, and we need to apply our mindfulness and attention to that. And whilst we're meditating, we should be vigilant, we should be alert. And in the moment we become distracted, we should be aware of this obstacle. Because we can start to meditate after 10 seconds, we're thinking of something else, completely irrelevant. It's nothing to do with the meditation. So 10 minutes can go by. We're just going over the projects we have for next week or for the holiday we're planning, our work. So we need to be vigilant. If we don't put effort in avoiding these distractive thoughts, we can carry out a 10-minute meditation or 10 hours. But our mind won't change. Our mind will remain distracted. So we need to be vigilant and apply this in the meditation. So be mindful and vigilant. So we're going to start now. So make sure we're sitting in a correct posture. A correct posture, but at the same time relaxed. So ideally we should have the back straight. So for each of the 3 parts of the meditation, I will hit the gong. So first the breath, then the purifying light, and then the third part, transmitting that energy to others. So now I'm going to comment a few things Rinpoche mentioned yesterday in the teachings. And then later, at the end, we'll leave time for questions. When we talk about samsara and nirvana, samsara means conditioned life, ordinary life, where we are. And it is implied that we are trapped in a vicious cycle, in a situation in which, even though we don't wish for, difficult circumstances continuously arise. We have to experience again and again what we don't wish for. So samsara refers to this situation. If we observe our life, it's just like that. Even if we don't wish for it, we have to continually experience undesirable situations. And we have no capacity, no method, no way to control this. We have no way to choose the conditions of our life in the present or in the future. So samsara is basically being trapped under the power of karma and delusion. Karma is a Sanskrit word which means action, and it refers to us. Due to our actions, due to what we do, we are creating what we're going to experience in the future. When these actions are incorrect, when they're negative and cause harm to others or ourselves, the result of these actions, sooner or later, is going to bring us problems. It's going to be suffering. So the other aspect is the delusions. This is the state, a pathological state of our mind. We have the capacity to understand and perceive exactly how things exist. And through our mind, we experience all types of sensation, pleasant, unpleasant. And this capacity, this consciousness, is contaminated. So these delusions are states of this pathological mind. We experience the world distorted. And the root of these delusions is ignorance. And then due to this ignorance, desire, attachment, jealousy, pride arise, pathological states of mind. So when the mind is agitated, when the mind is under the control of these delusions, what we do, what we think, is contaminated. And constantly, we're creating causes and conditions which sooner or later are going to manifest into undesirable situations, suffering. So when we talk about samsara, we're referring to this situation, the situation in which we are in. These two factors, karma, actions which we've created in the past, which we're constantly experiencing, and then every day, the actions that we're continually creating, leaving imprints. And then delusions, these negative states of mind, which perceive reality in a distorted way. This is what's trapping us. This is what maintains us in this vicious cycle of samsara. So then the way to get out, when we talk about nirvana or enlightenment, is to free oneself completely from this pathological state. We can talk about two causes: compassion and wisdom. In the same way, we are under control of karma and delusions, and because of that, we live in this world of conflict, this world of insatisfaction, of pain and suffering. Those beings who are capable of changing these two causes of karma and delusion for another different cause, two different causes, which are a lot more healthy, which are a lot more that don't have any error, they're completely correct, which is compassion and wisdom. Those people who are capable to change these two causes, to substitute them, to substitute karma and delusion for compassion and wisdom, is what we call Buddhas or Bodhisattvas. Those who have achieved enlightenment or are on the path to enlightenment. So when we talk about practicing Dharma, the practice is this: to do that change, to substitute karma and delusion for compassion and wisdom. And to follow the example, not in a way which someone's just going to transmit these attainments. No, right now we have the capacity to realize that our life is completely under the control of karma and delusion, that we're completely trapped like prisoners in this situation which is so painful. First step, recognize this. Recognize, and then see how karma and delusion function. Understand that. Then we can try and free ourselves. We can try and liberate ourselves. And the method is substituting, changing these two factors of karma and delusion for the real medicine that can cure us completely, which is compassion and wisdom. And to achieve that, we use the Buddha's teachings, examples from the teachers, advice, which we apply in our daily life. So I wanted to talk about these two aspects, wisdom and compassion, which is the method, the wisdom we need to cure ourselves of this chronic disease under the control of karma and delusion. So the only way this is going to be of any benefit is by understanding clearly how this works, and then from our own side apply it. Take this medicine. There's no one outside of us. There's no Buddha or Lama or teacher who's going to come along and find a solution for our problems. We have to do the work. We have to recognize the situation in which we're in, recognize the problem, understand where it comes from, and then find the medicine, the method to cure this situation. And then follow this path. Take this medicine in order to liberate ourselves. So this was, just to comment a little bit on these two aspects, compassion and wisdom. We could talk about this for a long time. In fact, all the teachings are talking about these two aspects. all the Buddha's teachings we can divide into these two aspects, compassion and wisdom. So I thought to comment on a verse which we recite always at the beginning of the teachings. A prayer which we recite, remembering the qualities of the objects of refuge. And then we recite a verse which Venerable Jesús just recited in Tibetan. And this verse is something which Rinpoche recites very slowly to meditate on. So the translation of this verse, these are just examples of that the Buddha uses in the teachings in the sutras to explain impermanence and emptiness. So the translation of this verse is a star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. So it just names examples which can help us to understand the teachings of the Buddha. So basically, these examples refer to the aspect of wisdom that we were talking about earlier, that we have to substitute for the karma and delusion. Wisdom and compassion. So we're going to look at this aspect of wisdom, and then we'll look at the aspect of compassion. So these examples that Buddha mentions, here the wisdom in this case is emphasizing on one side the transitory nature of life. To see that everything in our life is impermanent and are changing moment by moment. Not only year by year or generation by generation. No, in every moment, all compositional phenomena, all phenomena which depend on causes and conditions, are in a state of continual change. However, our way of perceiving reality, and if we analyze this, we can understand that when we just let ourselves go, following the delusions in daily life, we grasp that everything is existing permanently. And our situations often turn into frustration and painful situations. Again and again, we try and search for pleasures, which the only effect they have on us is increasing our insatisfaction. And they bring us suffering and pain, and at the end of the day, they lead us to really waste our life. So the objects of desire, the objects of our pleasure, and objects of aversion and pain, we perceive as something very real, concrete. We don't see it as something transitory, something impermanent, depending on causes and conditions, and a permanent state of change. No. We experience something very real, very solid. So everything in our life we perceive as something which is always going to be there. It's always going to be there. And we dedicate so much time just trying to satisfy our needs. So in the teachings of impermanence, Buddha emphasizes the need to recognize the fact that everything in life is transitory. There's nothing to grasp at. Health, family, friends, relatives, wealth, material objects, everything is in a constant state of change. And every time we grasp at something, every time we try and maintain, or every time we try and make something last, it just ends in frustration because there's nothing that lasts forever. So this attitude always leads to frustration, to insatisfaction. So with these examples, which there are various in this verse, they're referring to the fact that everything is impermanent, transitory. They don't last. There's nothing that lasts. There's nothing to grasp at. There's nothing worth putting all of our energy and all of our hopes and putting all of our energy in our life into that. Because these phenomena are impermanent and will just lead to insatisfaction. So with these examples, we want to perceive the impermanent nature of things. And then the other aspect is to perceive the ultimate reality. The ultimate reality of phenomena is not only are they in a state of constant change, if we try and see their essence, if we search for the ultimate reality of things, we see that everything is in fact just an intricate web of causes and conditions. And it's due to these causes and conditions that things appear to us. But when we search for that thing, like the body, the person, the material object, when we search for it and we start to separate these causes and conditions, at the end of the day, there's nothing there. Not one of these causes or conditions is the same, or is the thing we're searching for. And there's nowhere we can find this thing distinct or separate from those causes and conditions. So when we use the capacity we have to analyze and to investigate the reality of things, we see that everything dissolves into emptiness. The reality is when we search for them, we can't find them. We perceive the world in one way. I, my body, the place I'm in. Conventionally, they work, they exist. But if we search for a concrete, solid existence, if we investigate to see if which we perceive exists as we perceive it, we see that everything, in fact, is just like an illusion. It's just like a dream. It dissolves into emptiness. With this verse, we're contemplating these two aspects, the impermanence of things, and understand the ultimate nature of reality, emptiness. This verse uses various examples. So firstly, the verse mentions a star. Everything we perceive in our life, I, the person, our body, the center of our universe, this I and our body, the people we relate with, whatever object we perceive in our life, experiences of pain, experiences of suffering, etc., experiences of pleasure, happiness. We see that they are like these examples. Firstly, a star. And this refers to in the morning, before the sun rises, there are stars in the sky. And as the light increases, as the sunrise begins, these stars begin to vanish. Those stars which are left are the brightest stars. As the sun rises, we might see the brightest stars still there in the sky, but after a few moments, they also vanish. As there's more sunlight, they disappear. So all phenomena that we perceive are like this. like a star which we're perceiving, but in a few moments, as the sun rises, will disappear. So this helps us to remember that everything in our life is transitory. Everything we perceive, we're perceiving clearly, but it's just a question of time, and it will disappear. So this helps us to meditate on impermanence, but also we can use this example to meditate on emptiness. And it's by seeing that when the sun hasn't yet risen, we see those stars in the sky. So we can see those stars whilst the sun hasn't risen. And as soon as there's enough light, then they disappear. So by using this, we can meditate on emptiness. Whilst there's still darkness in our mind, in the same way, before the sun rises, there's darkness in the sky, we can see stars. But in the moment that there's more sunlight, they disappear. In the same way, whilst our mind is obscured by ignorance that blocks us from seeing how things exist, whilst we don't understand, while we don't perceive the ultimate nature of reality, everything we see appears as something independent, something existing real from its own side. It doesn't appear as an illusion. It doesn't appear as in a dream. It appears to us as something very solid, very concrete, independent. So whilst our mind is obscured by ignorance, whilst we're not able to realize emptiness, everything that we perceive appears like that, independent, real, concrete. And not only that, we completely believe it. So this is the same way as whilst we're dreaming, we see objects, we see people, we see things, and we believe in the dream that they're real. When in reality, it is nothing other than an empty appearance. So this example of the star, we can use in this way to meditate on emptiness. Whilst our mind is obscured by the darkness of ignorance, while we're not able to perceive the ultimate nature of emptiness, everything appears as independent, as existing from their own side. And we believe this. And this is the cause of all of our problems and others' problems. So this is the first example, and the second one is a visual aberration in Tibetan Revert. So this comes from the Tibetan text, ancient text from India, and this example they used a lot to meditate on emptiness, and it refers to a visual kind of illness. I don't know how they translate this, maybe as cataracts. There's a problem in the eye. It's a problem with the vision that the person sees like hairs falling in front of them. They see little lines in front of their eyes, and it appears that they're falling. So someone who's not aware that they have this problem, this illness, they believe that there's hairs falling from above. They might even believe that their hairs are falling out of their head. But it refers to this problem with the vision. that hairs appear to be falling. Now, a doctor who knows that this is a sickness knows that there aren't any hairs there. So this example is used to understand emptiness. We, due to ignorance, due to grasping a self-existence, I, all the material objects, people, the world, we grasp as something existing, concrete, real, independent, and we believe it 100%. The same as the sick person who believes that what they're experiencing are hairs falling in front of them. So firstly, we should understand that this vision of something so concrete, so solid, even though we experience it in that way, we know in the same way that as the sick person knows that it's not real. And if we continue to meditate correctly on emptiness, we will come to see that nothing exists independent, nothing exists inherently from its own side. So this is the visual aberration. Then the verse mentions a flame of a lamp. So this refers to the fact that everything depends on causes and conditions. In the same way, a flame of a lamp, we see the light of the flame, whilst the wax is there. All those conditions, the flame appears. We can perceive the light. But if we take away the wick, if we take away the wax, the flame will disappear. It will go out. So with this example, we should reflect that everything depends on causes and conditions. And in the moment we take away one of these causes, one of these conditions, it will disappear. This example also refers to impermanence. As the flame burns, it's consuming the wax of the candle until finally, when the wax runs out completely, the flame will be extinguished. So the next example is an illusion. The example they use is the example of a magician, which in the text is often mentioned. So these magicians had certain powers, through recitating mantras or controlling the minds of others. They can make objects appear. They can make horses, elephants, various objects appear. So this is something which might seem a bit strange. We or at least I haven't met anyone who has this capacity. So this example, if we like, we can use something a bit nearer, a bit easier to understand, like, for example, the screen of a computer, the screen of a television, in which we see an elephant, we see a horse. So that's correct. In the screen we can perceive a horse. But the reality, there is no real horse there on the screen, on that glass, on the plastic. There's no horse or elephant there. So using this example, we try to understand that what we perceive, what we see, when we don't understand how things exist, they appear as something very real, solid. The elephant that appears on the screen seems very real. But we know in reality there's no elephant in the screen or on the screen. So in our lives we perceive everything as existing inherently from their own side. We believe it 100% in the same way as if we're watching these images on a screen. So this is like an illusion. Then the verse mentions a drop of dew. So the drop of dew refers to impermanence. In the morning, we might see a drop of dew on the grass, on a blade of grass, and as the sun rises, it will disappear. And then also, the verse mentions a bubble, which again is referring to the transitory nature of life. And they use this example to illustrate that our life is something so fragile, like a bubble floating in a stream. Lasts a short time. The slightest condition can disappear. So our life is as fragile. We might just take for granted that we're going to just live and live and live. But the reality is in any moment our life can finish, like a bubble. Then the verse mentions a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. So the dream we mentioned the other day is an excellent example to use to meditate on emptiness, as we mentioned last week. Now, a flash of lightning also emphasizes the transitory nature of life, this precious human rebirth that we have with all the perfect conditions to practice. Practice Dharma is something which lasts an instant. So we take for granted that we're going to always be here, but the reality of our consciousness, what we're experiencing now, what our consciousness experiences now, is like a flash of lightning in the sky. For a moment, it can illuminate everything, and the second moment disappears. And again, we're in darkness. This precious human rebirth that we have with all perfect conditions is something very precious. But it's something, if we don't use, if we don't make the most of, it's something which is going to finish very quickly. And then when these conditions to practice Dharma end, it's going to be very difficult to bring these together again. And finally, a cloud. A cloud is also talking about impermanence and emptiness. A cloud has a shape, but if we observe with attention, we can see that shape is changing constantly. It's transforming in dependence on the angle that we're observing the cloud. And if we went to try and touch that object, touch that cloud, we wouldn't find anything, just vapor. So we can use this example to meditate on the transitory nature of life and emptiness. And the end of the verse says we should see all conditioned things as such. We should see that everything we experience in our life is changing, moment by moment. There's nothing really worth grasping onto. Because if we do, we're going to be frustrated. It's going to end in deception. Everything's like an illusion. Nothing has true existence. So this was a little bit about the wisdom aspect. I wanted also to mention, maybe it's a bit late. I've extended quite a lot on the wisdom aspects. There's not a lot of time left. But just briefly then to mention, yesterday Rinpoche mentioned some verses from Lama Chopa. So at the end of Lama Chopa there's a verse which we recite to receive blessings. And it starts by mentioning how to develop bodhicitta and how to carry out the practice of exchanging oneself for others. How to transform our mind into the precious mind of bodhicitta. So bodhicitta is a Sanskrit word. Bodhi is the first part, and then citta. Bodhi means enlightenment, and citta is mind or thought. So in general, it can be translated as the thought of enlightenment, or the wish to achieve enlightenment. So as I mentioned earlier, these two aspects of wisdom and compassion, this would be the compassion aspect. This wish to achieve enlightenment is the result of compassion. So the method to develop this attitude, this wish to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, has a lot of detail. But just briefly, to resume this, there's two methods. The method of 7-point cause and effect method, and the other method is exchanging self for others. So this verse talks about the practice of exchanging oneself with others. So in practice, we start by developing equanimity. We become aware of the fact that right now we discriminate. We divide the world up into friends, enemies, and strangers. So reflecting and becoming aware of the fact that all sentient beings are in fact the same. Everybody is looking for happiness. Nobody wants to experience suffering. We begin to develop this mind of equanimity. All sentient beings, all beings which have consciousness, in the same way that we're conscious of suffering and we want to avoid it, all beings are in exactly the same situation. All beings who have consciousness are exactly the same as us. There's nobody who wants to suffer. There's nobody who wants to experience suffering or pain. In this aspect, we're exactly the same. And the wish to experience happiness, this is also something which we share with all beings. All conscious beings desire to be happy, wish to experience lasting happiness. They want to experience a lasting happiness, not a happiness which ends. So we begin by perceiving all sentient beings as the same as us. We all make mistakes. We all have defects. When we make mistakes, we appreciate when people forgive us. In the same way that there's no difference between ourselves and others. So we start by developing the mind of equanimity. And it's something which isn't going to just arise in our minds easily if we don't put effort, if we don't work on it. Because at the moment, our mind is continually discriminating. Those beings who we're interested in, attracted to, and those who we feel aversion or are not interested in. So the base is seeing all beings with equanimity. Then on this base, we develop a mind of loving kindness. See all beings in the same way we see the most cherished person in our life, the most beloved person in our life. In reality, they're exactly the same. If we're thinking of our mother, who's been so kind to us, if we contemplate others, we can develop this attitude that recognizes the kindness of all sentient beings and develop that mind of loving kindness to all. Develop the wish to repay the kindness. We develop that wish that strives to repay the kindness of all other sentient beings. And then in the verse that Rinpoche mentioned, it mentions the disadvantages of self-cherishing. And in fact, all the texts, the mind training texts, the principal point, the essence, is recognizing this self-cherishing thought as the root of all of our problems. So as the text says, we should place all the blames onto one. The real enemy is the self-cherishing thought. The thought that looks to benefit ourselves and considers others as something inferior. So we should begin to realize that this is something which completely dominates our mind, dominates our life. It's something which dominates our society. It's something ingrained in us and ingrained in our society. This thought of thinking, I am the most important. If we analyze, we can see this is the cause of all of our problems. Then the verse mentions the solution. The solution, which is the altruistic attitude, which is the source of all happiness for myself and others. This is something, if we analyze, we can come to the conclusion this is true. In the world, there's so many examples that we can see which prove that the stronger the self-cherishing attitude is, the more ego we have, the more suffering, the more pain. We can see that this is the source of suffering. And this is blocking us from being happy. This is blocking us from progressing on the spiritual path. This is blocking us from reaching enlightenment. So we should recognize this, recognize that it is the cause of all of our problems. So this chronic disease of self-cherishing is the cause, giving rise to my unsought suffering. Perceiving this, I seek your blessings to blame, begrudge, and destroy the monstrous demon of selfishness. In this verse, it emphasizes the fact that we should analyze again and again this attitude, which we all have, that manifests stronger depending on conditions, but this attitude of self-cherishing, which is the cause of all problems. So in the practice of mind training, we should be very mindful. Anything that happens to us which is undesirable, we should blame this enemy. If something happens to us we don't like, some negative experience, in that moment, we should place the blame on the self-cherishing thought. Any problem, any suffering we experience, we lay the blame on this. And any other suffering or problem that we may perceive others experience, also remember the cause. So any obstacle we may have for practicing Dharma is also due to this self-cherishing thought. So this practice puts a lot of emphasis on being aware and being mindful in our daily life and laying the blame directly on the self-cherishing thought for all the negative experiences we may have. So this is something we need to try and identify in our consciousness, because it's very common. When we start to understand this, straight away we find someone who we consider as having a lot of ego, a very selfish person. This person's got so much ego. We start to identify the problem in others. But with this practice, we shouldn't be judging others, we should be judging ourselves. All of this is for directing at ourselves. We shouldn't be blaming others, we shouldn't be judging others. This is a practice directed at our self-cherishing thought. It's directed to our mind, something to apply ourselves. Be aware in any situation, unpleasant situation that we may experience, blame the self-cherishing thought. In another verse, it explains an effective practice called Tonglen, a practice which we do with the breath, taking the suffering and giving happiness, which destroys this self-cherishing thought. But here the emphasis is on recognizing that the real enemy is this self-cherishing thought. It is the cause of all problems, either directly or indirectly. And in our lives, try and reduce this attitude as much as we can. In the next verse, the advantages and benefits of the opposite are mentioned. The mind that cherishes mothers and places them in bliss is the gateway. It is the door leading to infinite qualities. Seeing this, I seek your blessings to cherish these beings more than my life, even should they rise up as my enemies. This verse talks about the benefits of the altruistic attitude, the exact opposite of the self-cherishing thought. It's true that in our mind, it's this ego which dominates, and it's difficult to decrease this self-cherishing thought. But in our mind, there's also a positive aspect. We have the capacity to feel love, compassion, empathy with others. And this is something we can see in the mother and the father, the love they experience towards their sons, their daughters. Every one of us has this capacity to love. We all have this capacity to feel empathy. So when we talk about the self-cherishing thought, we shouldn't feel depressed. We shouldn't feel, oh, I'm someone so negative, I've got so much ego, I'm so selfish. It's true that we have that problem, but also we have the opposite. We have something so precious. We have the solution to our problem. So we have to start recognizing this capacity we have to develop love, compassion, kindness, an altruistic attitude that wants to benefit and help others. And if we start to value this, if we recognize the value, and then we work with it and we develop it, this is just the medicine which is going to cure us from the self-cherishing thought. So we have to remember again and again, and we have to analyze again and again the benefits and the value of this attitude. And there's loads of examples we can see in our lives when we have a sincere motivation the motivation that really wants to help others. The good heart. This is something which benefits us and something we can see which benefits others. People appreciate it. We can see that it is the cause of all happiness. So there's many examples we can see in others. We all know someone who has a good heart, a really good person. A person with great qualities, an altruistic person, dedicated to others. We can see that that person is a source of happiness to others. Wherever he goes, we can see that people appreciate him or her. So we have to recognize that we have that capacity. We have everything that we need. We have all the perfect conditions. And we can develop and increase that love, that good heart. There's nothing that isn't out of our hands, because this altruistic attitude which cherishes others more than oneself, that wants to try and alleviate them from their suffering and place them in happiness without anything in return, an attitude which sees others as exactly the same as ourselves. If we start to value and appreciate that attitude and we work on it and develop it, there's no type of happiness in this world which is out of our reach. This is the same for ordinary life and also for the spiritual path. From temporary happiness to ultimate happiness. The capacity we have for love and compassion is what is leading us to our goal. It's something which we have right now. So it's simply the case we just need to increment it. Like a plant in our house. If we water it, if we care for it, it's going to grow, it's going to bring a fruit. So this attitude we have, it's in our mind, it's present within us. Right now in our life, we have the perfect conditions. We can understand it, we can contemplate the benefits, we can develop faith that it's something that we need. And it's something which is really going to bring lasting happiness. And there's nothing which impedes us from developing this attitude. So in the second verse, we should remember again and again the benefits. Whereas before we were laying the blame of the self-cherishing thought. We should make it our daily practice. Anything unpleasant that arises, lay the blame on the self-cherishing thought. In this way, we're developing aversion to this self-cherishing thought. promoting that thought which sees it as something which we're not interested in. So we're, in a way, weakening it, reducing this tendency we have of me como the center of the universe, I. So we change this thought for the complete opposite, the thought which cherishes others. We start to analyze and see that this sincere altruistic attitude is the source of all happiness. And it's something that's really worthwhile putting effort in. Something which we have right now. So we just need to increase it to make it stronger. How to make it stronger? We need to contemplate again and again the benefits and to apply it in our practice. So Rinpoche mentioned how to apply these in a certain meditation, which is that meditation which takes the suffering of others and gives with loving kindness all the happiness they desire. Our attitude since the beginning of this time is to try and avoid all unpleasant situations. And if somebody else happens to experience something unpleasant, we couldn't care less. Our habit is to try and avoid any type of suffering. And if others happen to experience it, we don't feel anything in particular. But this attitude, up to now, hasn't led us to experience a lasting happiness. So now we're going to try to do the complete opposite, which really works if we train our mind in this. At first it might seem difficult, but if we train in time, it just becomes habit. Before I wanted to get rid of anything unpleasant, and if others experienced it, I didn't care. Now I'm going to do the complete opposite. Anybody who's experiencing a problem, mentally, I'm going to think, may I experience their problem? And may they experience any happiness, anything I have in my life, my possessions, my merits, may they enjoy these. So we train our mind in this thought. May I experience the suffering of sentient beings, and by which destroy the self-cherishing thought, and any enjoyments I experience, any happiness I experience, may others experience. May they have it. So I wanted just to briefly touch on these two aspects, wisdom and compassion, and try to understand that up to now, we're completely under the control of karma and delusion. And that is why we're slaves. That is why we're trapped. That is why we're destined to experience again and again and again suffering, unpleasant experiences. And if we don't do anything to change this, if we continue to be under the control of karma and delusion, we're not going to escape. We're not going to find a way out. We'll go up and down, but we're going to be subject to the power of karma and delusion without freedom. And again, we're going to have to experience suffering and pain. If we follow Buddha's example, if we follow the example of the bodhisattvas, beings on the path to enlightenment, we have to substitute, we have to exchange. We have to, in a way, escape the situation we're now in, of karma and delusion, and substitute that with wisdom and compassion. Wisdom, realizing that everything is impermanent, is like a dream, like an illusion, and is empty of inherent existence. And then together with that wisdom, compassion. an attitude which sees others as exactly the same as oneself, looking for happiness, not wanting to experience suffering. And realizing that right now we can do so much to benefit and to help others. If we don't do anything, right now they don't have the capacity to change their situation. So we develop this altruistic mind towards all sentient beings. And we generate the determination to use our precious human rebirth, to use the conditions we have right now, to be able to benefit, to be able to help others. So we'll leave it here. If there's a question or a comment you want to make, we have 10 minutes.
Que si podía explicarlo un poco porque me llama la atención cuando hablan del adiestramiento mental.
Can you explain a little bit? Because the attitude, the self-cherishing attitude, grasping at the I, these practices you mentioned, is making weaker the self-cherishing thought, and at the same time developing wisdom, realizing emptiness. If you could just explain this a little bit. Yeah, this point I've just explained briefly, but these are two aspects which are different. One is self-grasping, and one is self-cherishing. One is the cause of the other. They're very related, but they're distinct. So in the second part, which I've explained, this practice of contemplating the disadvantages of self-cherishing and contemplating again and again the advantages of the altruistic attitude. What we're trying to eliminate, what we're trying to decrease, is the self-cherishing thought, ego. Which is the result of self-grasping. So earlier when I spoke about wisdom and compassion, we can see that these two, wisdom and compassion, are the antidotes for these two aspects we've mentioned. Self-grasping and self-cherishing. So the way to eliminate self-cherishing is with compassion. This is to do with conventional reality. There's something similar in other spiritual traditions. Everybody recognizes the disadvantages of ego, of self-cherishing, and everybody can recognize the virtues of a mind of loving compassion, a good heart. This is something similar in other traditions. And many work to achieve this. So this is at a conventional level. Now, even if we develop this altruistic mind and we eliminate completely the self-cherishing thought, we can benefit others, we can benefit society, we can benefit ourselves. But if we don't eliminate the ignorance, which is the root, the grasping at the I, grasping at the phenomena as inherently existing from their own side, we will not be able to escape samsara. Why? Whilst this wisdom that realizes emptiness is missing, based on that grasping at the I, we experience aversion, we experience attraction to the objects. And this causes us to create actions, to create karma. And this just makes this vicious cycle continue, controlled by karma and delusion. Now, if we eliminate this ignorance, we eliminate self-grasping. Without ignorance, the delusions can't arise. Desire, attachment, etc. won't arise in our mind. And without these delusions in our mind, we won't be able to create contaminated actions, karma, whose result is suffering. So we can say they're distinct, but they're both necessary. So the ultimate way to eliminate is with wisdom realizing emptiness. But to be able to develop that wisdom realizing emptiness, we need certain conditions. And these conditions we won't achieve unless we have an ethical way of living, if we don't avoid negative actions, if we don't avoid harming others, if we don't practice virtue. So when we talk about achieving nirvana, freedom from suffering, apart from this, if we want to achieve enlightenment, if we want to have the capacity to benefit others, to be able to benefit others perfectly, to be able to reach this state of enlightenment, we need to develop compassion equally to all sentient beings. We need to apply the aspect of method. We need to accumulate merit, which is going to convert into the cause of achieving all the qualities of an enlightened being and having all the power, capacity to help others. So this contemplation, meditating on the disadvantages of self-cherishing, is more at a conventional level. Then on a more subtle level, what you have to eliminate is self-grasping, ignorance. The vision of perceiving I and others and phenomena as existing inherently from their own side, this distorted view. Venerable Jesús, thank you ever so much for your kind words and advice, and thanks especially from all the students who are here from Valencia. So my question is about a story that Rinpoche mentioned yesterday about two monks. Oh yeah, the story about the old woman who needed to cross the river, and the monks there, one who helped, one didn't help. So in our daily lives, we can find ourselves in situations where we could act in a more compassionate way. But what happens? This compassionate thought comes later, after the opportunity has passed. We reflect and we think, oh, we could have been more compassionate, we could have done this, we could have done that better. So my question is, what advice can you give us to be able to carry out the reflection in the moment? So this is a very interesting point. I identify completely with that. It happens so often. So many opportunities arise in our lives to be able to help others, to dedicate time and energy to others, which it's later, when the moment's passed, we feel like, oh, I wish I'd done this, I wish I'd said that, I wish I'd done something different. It's true. But this is something that we'll achieve in time with a continual practice. By reflecting on the disadvantages of self-cherishing, and reflecting again and again on the advantages of the altruistic mind, we're leaving imprints on our mind. And then when a situation arises where before we maybe didn't even realize or didn't see it as an opportunity to help someone, now thanks to this meditation we can act, we can do something. It's true that it's difficult to be aware in every moment and to make use of every single opportunity that arises to help and benefit others. But it's also true that every practice that we do, every meditation we carry out, leaves an imprint and helps us become a better person, and helps us to be more aware. So it's a learning process, it's a process of becoming more familiar. And this works perfectly. The trouble is we have a lot of expectations. We think that meditating one day, we're going to suddenly become perfect in everything we do. But this is wrong. This is a mistake. We are so habituated, we're so familiar with this attitude we've had since the beginning of this time. So slowly we need to start to decrease this self-cherishing attitude and increase this altruistic mind. And this is where the importance of a daily practice comes in. If we get up and think, today I have all the perfect conditions to practice and to apply the teachings, to apply Dharma in my life, and I'm going to try and not waste any opportunity. I'm going to try and apply. Each of us, everyone here, we're different. From what I understand, from what I understand of the teachings, I'm going to apply in my daily life. We make that determination. If we start the day like that, if we start the day with that motivation, and we take it as something very seriously, and we start our day with it, then it's more likely that during the day we're going to be able to make use of opportunities that arise. Then at the end of the day, if we look back and review our day, normally we look back and we think, we could have done that better, but that's something which is quite beneficial. Recognizing that wasted opportunity is something very good, because we can think, okay, tomorrow I'm going to try and do better. Tomorrow, when something similar happens, I'm going to be aware, I'm going to be ready, I'm going to try and do it better. It's something very positive. In fact, the virtues, the positive aspects of our mind, we develop like this. We can only do it like this, with determination. Dedicating some time in our day to do introspection. So start the day with a positive, healthy motivation, and then at the end of the day, do a bit of introspection. Go over what we did during the day. And this practice, I'm sure that in time, over the weeks, over the months, over the years, we'll see changes. But if we have the expectation that in a month we're going to be perfect, we'll probably become deflated. So it's not easy. It's something which we need to do continuously over time. Everything leaves an imprint. Every meditation, every practice, every positive action we do, even if we don't realize, it leaves a positive imprint which is going to bring its result, I'm sure. So, good morning. Thank you for your time and your teachings. My question is about suffering. Something you mentioned last week. So she's saying that in life, when others are suffering, we see this suffering and we kind of make it our own, and we also suffer. So we're all in a state of suffering. We see someone in a difficult situation and we think, oh, poor them. How does this help? This seems to, in a way, create suffering, not only for them, which they're experiencing, but also for us. Yeah, this is something that's not easy. On one hand, we try and develop this motivation. It's not the fact that we're going to physically be able to give suffering to others or take suffering from others. Buddhism says that everybody has a certain situation dependent on the thoughts and the mind stream of each individual. If it was possible to take suffering from sentient beings, the Buddhas would have done it by now. There'd be nobody left suffering. But it's not possible. So these verses, which we've been looking at, is aimed at developing the attitude which we should try and change, the attitude which is so concerned, me, I, my problems. Convert and change that attitude which causes so much suffering, so much pain in our lives, creates so much confusion and problems. Change that attitude. Develop the complete opposite. That attitude of empathy, that attitude of loving kindness, of cherishing others, of wanting to benefit, of wanting to help others. So here we should try and develop this attitude of love and compassion. So we might think that by meditating in the suffering of others, we're going to somehow feel very sad. We're somehow going to create suffering for ourselves. When in reality, this is not the case. When we start, maybe it might appear to be the case, but it's through lack of wisdom. The reality, by contemplating the suffering of others, it's not that we experience more suffering. When you contemplate the suffering of others and you see you can do something to help, to alleviate that to help that person, that brings great satisfaction. It doesn't bring suffering or problems. When we try to develop compassion, we shouldn't feel that this person is suffering, so I'm going to suffer. I'm going to feel sad. This person here is depressed, I'm going to feel depressed. That's completely wrong. What we should do is to see that person as someone very precious. We see that person suffering, has a problem. And if we can find a way to help, then we try and help that person altruistically. And this attitude doesn't bring with it any suffering. Doesn't bring suffering for ourselves. Now, to develop this thought is not easy. We need a lot of wisdom. But it's important, even now, if we're not able to So last week somebody mentioned when we see injustices in life, when we see people suffering innocently, and we feel frustrated because there's nothing we can do, we feel like we're incapable of helping, we see beings suffering, we feel, I can't do anything, what can I do? It's like this almost can give rise to pain and suffering within ourselves. But this is due to a lack of wisdom. You have to understand that if we see someone who's suffering, if we suffer for them, what we're doing is increasing suffering. Doesn't make any sense. That isn't compassion. That's not compassion, that's ignorance. That doesn't help the other person, doesn't alleviate their suffering. What it does is increase suffering. If we practice meditation, if we become aware of the capacity of our mind, the potential that we have, we can influence the state of happiness in others. We have that capacity. And if we try and use this capacity, we see that there is no suffering, there's no difficult situation that we can't use to benefit ourselves. So the example of innocent suffering. We have no way to help, no way to alleviate that situation. If we understand the power of our mind, if we understand the capacity, the power of our meditation and our motivation, if there's any physical act we can do to help, of course, we should do it. But in the case there's nothing we can do, just simply with this meditation, the meditation we've done, the simple meditation of visualizing light, purifying us, and then we do that same activity towards others. Even if we can't see it, we can't perceive it, it helps to alleviate suffering. It helps to alleviate the suffering of others. And if we do it sincerely, right now, sitting here, if we contemplate this and we do this meditation, we're benefiting others. Any desperate situations that we might perceive in the world, where we have no capacity apparently to help, we always have the possibility to carry out this meditation, and we will be benefiting. We will be benefiting the world, benefiting others. It will have a positive effect. And this can be demonstrated scientifically. The power of thought, the energy that we can transmit through thoughts. So if we see great injustices in the world and we feel anger and hatred, the only thing we're doing is increasing that suffering situation. Because that anger, that hatred is the cause of suffering. We might feel that we're compassionate because we hate someone who's causing lots of suffering. That isn't wise. Now with wisdom, if we become to see the capacity of our mind, the capacity we have to influence the world around us, and if we use that capacity in a positive way, there's no suffering in this world, no suffering that sentient beings can experience that we can't use to alleviate and to benefit. We might not be able to do something in that moment, something physical, but if we analyze, we can understand this. It's not something we should just blindly believe because the Buddha said or a Lama said. If we analyze, we can see that our attitude has so much influence. And if we develop the wisdom that perceives the world around us as completely related to our mind, it's not something completely independent, it is in fact related to our interior state. We can see that by improving our mental states, by improving our mind, we are improving the world. And it doesn't bring suffering. We can think of enlightened beings. They're in a constant state of bliss, and they're constantly working to benefit others. And it's not the case that the suffering of sentient beings is causing the Buddhas to suffer. They're working for others, benefiting others, and it produces in them great bliss. So this is something difficult to understand, and to be able to grasp this point, we need to develop wisdom. We can have a very sincere compassion, an intense compassion, but if we don't develop wisdom, that compassion will not be effective in alleviating suffering of others. We need to develop the two aspects. Compassion, of course, but together, wisdom. Together with compassion, we develop wisdom. And then we take these two into the practice. So again, I'd like to thank you, and thank especially for the teachings you're giving us. So yesterday, Lama Zopa Rinpoche spoke of how destructive hatred is, and how necessary and positive the attitude of patience is. No, I don't tend to get angry. I practice patience. And I practice compassion. I contemplate the suffering of others. And I practice having compassion to myself. But even though I'm carrying out this practice, I can't avoid moments of anger. Remember, Rinpoche mentioned that even just a moment of anger can lead to eons of suffering. What practice would you recommend to avoid those seconds of anger arise in our mind and can set us back so far in the spiritual path? Continue practicing. Shantideva said, there's no better practice than the practice of patience, and there's no worse attitude as anger. So practice is something that we need to develop again and again in our lives, and to apply all types of different methods to make it stronger. And all practices that we do, even if we don't perceive it directly, is helping to increase patience. So patience is developed when we're conscious of the disadvantages of anger, hatred, aversion, and when we're aware of the benefits of this quality of patience. And an important point is to understand that patience, which may appear as a very passive attitude, not reacting, in fact, Patience is the capacity of not losing our inner peace, not losing our inner positive state of mind. It's the capacity of remaining in a healthy state of mind with a positive attitude towards others. In the case of patience, we should maintain that inner peace, especially in difficult situations, especially when there's someone or something causing, we can say, harm in a way. To develop this virtue, we need certain conditions. It's like a person who wants to train climbing vertical walls. They need to go to a certain place with the right conditions, with a vertical wall to practice climbing. He can't do it in a garden or in a park. For us to be able to develop patience, we don't have to go far. We don't have to go very far looking for the conditions, because we have all the conditions in abundance here every day. Recognize easy situations, beginning to develop patience, maintaining our inner calm. This isn't a passive attitude. If there's a problem we can solve, then we do what we can to solve it. If there's someone very negative who's creating a lot of negativity and problems, if we can do something to avoid it, even if it means reporting it to the police and he ends up in prison, we do it. But we don't lose our inner peace. This is a question of training our mind slowly, using the difficult situations that arise during the day, and training our mind, training this capacity. So in Tibetan, Zopa, Lama Zopa, Zopa means patience. So in Tibetan, Zopa has this connotation of fortifying, of not losing that inner peace when difficult situations arise. Inner peace and positive attitude is very easy to maintain when everything's going well, everyone's acting correctly, there's a nice environment. It's difficult to develop that mind of patience. But however, when we have difficult experiences, situations which bother us, if we understand the opportunity, if we understand the benefits of developing patience, we can use these opportunities to fortify this inner attitude. So, thinking of the disadvantages of self-cherishing, the advantages of love and compassion and empathy, all of this helps develop patience. All of these are favorable conditions which help. If we develop this attitude of loving kindness towards others and we fortify this, when we see somebody who's agitated, somebody who insults us or causes us harm, someone who has a negative attitude who maybe wants to cause us harm, we can develop compassion for them. And if we have that attitude of compassion, even though they harm us, even though they try to cause us harm, in our minds, anger doesn't rise, hatred doesn't rise towards that person. And there's very difficult cases, which is going to be difficult to maintain that inner peace. But these difficult cases, right now, we're not capable to work with them. We will lose our inner peace. We'll become angry. We might generate hatred. But we should start slowly with with their easier situations. So if we put in place all the causes and conditions, if we develop this capacity slowly, there's no situation in life that can harm us. Not only harm us, even the opposite. However negative, however painful a situation might be, a person can transform that into the perfect condition to practice the path. And this is a result of hard work, slowly, again and again. So in the Bodhisattva Charyattara, when it mentions in one moment of anger can destroy eons of merit, this is to put emphasis on the fact that anger is something very destructive, and we should do whatever we can in our power to decrease it, and do whatever we can to act correctly when somebody acts in a negative way. We shouldn't feel anger, we shouldn't feel hatred. Now, if this person is a realized being, and we develop this anger, this hatred towards them, then it's something even more destructive. That's what Rinpoche mentioned yesterday. So an instant of anger destroys eons of merit, of happiness. We shouldn't take this as something to feel we're completely useless. We haven't got a solution. There's no hope for us. There's no hope for us to practice Dharma because we're continuously getting angry with people. Every time we get angry, we're just destroying our happiness, destroying our merits. So this can make us feel completely useless, hopeless. It's not for that. This is to make us feel this is something very serious. This is something that we should, as much as we can, try and avoid. We should use the teachings as something to apply in a positive way in our lives, not something to make more obstacles. We already have enough obstacles. We don't need any more obstacles in our lives. The fact is, we have perfect conditions to practice Dharma. And these teachings should stimulate us to apply in our daily lives these instructions which help us to advance in this spiritual path, in this inner path, this inner work that we have to do ourselves. And we should use the teachings as tools to help us practice, not as an obstacle, not as something which makes us feel depressed, which makes more obstacles to practice. Okay, thank you. Good morning. I have a doubt, conceptual, regarding the term Buddhist compassion. Yeah, in my mind, when I hear compassion, altruism, maybe I've got a different idea that comes to my mind. I'd like to have the Buddhist definition of these terms, please. Thank you. So, according to Buddhism, love and compassion are very similar. They're two aspects of the same attitude. Literally, love is the wish for others to be happy. And we develop this by thinking, may all sentient beings, we can think in one being or a group of beings, but in general, when we talk about love and compassion, universal love and compassion, we're talking about all beings. So love is the wish it's the thought that wishes others to have happiness and its causes. So it's the same as the love we have to someone very, very close to us, our sons or daughters or our partner. From our hearts, we wish them to be happy. We wish them to have everything they need. So love is this wish, the wish for others to be happy. Then compassion is the wish for them not to suffer. So the difference is when we think of love, when we think of others, we think of their wishes, what they need. We think, may they achieve everything they need to be happy, good health, wealth, achievements in the spiritual path. May they achieve liberation, may they achieve enlightenment, etc. It's the wish for others to achieve everything they need, everything they want. And in the case of compassion, we see others and we focus on the problems that they have, on the negative aspects of their life which are affecting them, like in disease, loneliness, depression, whatever type of suffering, physical or emotional. In this case, we think of others and we focus in particular in their problems and try and develop the wish that feels, may they find solution to their problems, may they be cured from their disease. May that person who's poor, who's living in misery, may they find wealth and richness. And may that person who is lonely, may they find company. May that person who is under the control of ignorance, may they find education, may they find wisdom. So in the case of compassion, we think of in the problems that they have, in the suffering that they experience, and try to develop the wish to alleviate the suffering. They say compassion is the cause of enlightenment because enlightenment is achieving the perfection which potentially lies within us. We have that capacity, that potential to reach enlightenment is within us right now. So to achieve that, the cause is to develop that thought of wanting to benefit others, contemplating their suffering. Think, to be able to benefit others, I have to achieve the state of perfection. I have to develop my mind. I have to develop all the positive aspects of my mind until I can achieve the state of an enlightened being, when I will effectively be able to help others. Until then, until I reach the state of perfection, I don't have the capacity to help all sentient beings. So that's why compassion is the root of enlightenment. With that wish of alleviating their suffering, and that combination of compassion and wisdom, when we achieve that state of enlightenment, those two aspects of compassion and wisdom will be converted into the two bodies of a Buddha. That wisdom which perceives everything exactly as it exists. So then the compassion aspect, the aspect that Buddha may take, such as the white Brahma deity or any other deities, this is the result of compassion. Being aware of the suffering of others, being aware of of their suffering state, of why they're trapped in this condition, they're going to experience again and again suffering. We develop the wish for them to be free. So the difference between love and compassion is that so the object is all sentient beings. So with love, we want to give. We want to give them everything they need, from temporary happiness, from enjoying good health, wealth, material things, right up to ultimate happiness of liberation and perfect enlightenment. Love is the wish for all sentient beings to have whatever they need to be perfectly happy. And compassion is the wish to free them completely from their painful situations, their suffering situations, which they're experiencing now and those which they will have to experience in the future. Last question. Good morning. Thank you, Venerable Jesús, for sharing your wisdom with all of us here present today. So a doubt rises in my mind, putting into practice this compassionate attitude. I'm going to put an example. I open the door to my house. I have lots of pigeons. So I've put crumbs, I've put pieces of bread when I can, and I put it outside my house for the pigeons, or also insects when I see insects. So for me it's very difficult, especially here in this city, Madrid, regarding this practice, lots of doubts rise in my mind because I see that people around me can become a bit concerned. So regarding this, human beings seem to put more emphasis on the humans. So we talk about all sentient beings, but what is the priority? It seems that human beings have priority, and animals are sort of in second place. So my question is, who has the priority, humans or animals? So should I continue this practice or what? Thanks. In Buddhism, they emphasize love and compassion to all beings. Of course, human beings, without doubt, but also in the same way towards animals, as beings which feel, sentient beings. So as beings, we should try and help them and try and avoid harming. Whenever we have the opportunity to benefit others, including animals, whatever being, we should do something so valuable. And it has the same value as helping humans. Now, if we look at individual situations, sometimes helping a certain being, a human or an animal, may bother or affect someone else or another being. So every situation is different. Every situation can be quite delicate, so it depends on our wisdom. We need to, on the one side, on the one hand, we have the motivation, we want to help. But sometimes we're very rigid. We want to help one type of being, and we don't care that it bothers or affects others. Every situation is different. So we should develop, on the one hand, this sincere attitude of love and compassion that wants to use every opportunity that arises to benefit and help others, together with the attitude of wisdom, analyze what actions really bring benefit, not only in a temporary way, but long-term. And try and avoid bothering or harming others. So this really depends on the wisdom of each person, depends on the different situations. But the most important is to develop this sincere wish. If we have this sincere attitude that wants to benefit others, spontaneously positive actions will arise. In the beginning, it might bring us problems. People might criticize us, or people might think we're ridiculous, dedicating so much time and attention, whatever we're doing. But this isn't important. If we see there's something we can do, something positive we can do to help, even if others think it's ridiculous, it doesn't matter. We shouldn't worry about that. I think every situation's different, but in the case of animals, if we practice Dharma, Rinpoche puts a lot of emphasis in this, and in the teachings it comes up again and again. Even giving one mouthful of food to a being like an insect, an ant, or in your case, the case of pigeons. If with this altruistic mind we recite mantras, we recite prayers, wanting to benefit them, this can bring great benefit in the future. It can help them find themselves in really good situations. Can help them bring together positive conditions. So in Buddhism, there's practices which help beings whose lives are in danger, protecting lives, saving lives. These practices are something very positive, very virtuous. It's positive for them. It's positive for those beings because we're creating a connection with them which is going to benefit them in the future. And it's very positive for us because we create a lot of merit. And they say that the positive energy we create basically depends on the motivation. If we have the sincere motivation of compassion, of bodhicitta, with that motivation, giving a crumb to a being born as an animal is something which can create inconceivable merits. So this is explained in detail in the text. Even small actions can bring big results. So all these are opportunities for us to practice Dharma, to practice love and compassion. Now, concrete cases, there's so many. Everyone has to find the balance. What is going to be more effective when it comes to helping others? Sometimes it may happen if we worry, we're concerned about the lives of animals or insects. For other people, it's something that they may perceive as ridiculous. They might laugh at us or make fun of us. But anyway, it's leaving an imprint in their minds. It leaves a positive imprint on their minds, even if they're looking at it as something ridiculous. We don't know. Maybe they may laugh and look at it as something ridiculous, but later, through seeing that act, that person reflects on it and learns from it and can even imitate it. In fact, that's how we learn. We learn from imitating, from copying. So this gesture, this act that others see, even if they reject it, is still something very helpful, very beneficial. And for the children, for the young people, to witness positive actions helps a lot, leaves a seed, a positive seed. And everything depends on our motivation. The attitude should be the most sincere attitude possible. So we'll leave it here. Think through spending this time analyzing, contemplating the teachings of Rinpoche. We've created a great quantity of merits. So may, due to these merits, due to this positive energy we've accumulated here, we dedicate for the happiness for sentient beings, for the suffering to disappear, for the causes of suffering to disappear, for sentient beings to have everything they wish for. We dedicate the positive energy for the teachings, the Dharma, which is the effective method leading others to happiness, for these teachings not to be lost, to not deteriorate, for them to be preserved and expand. And we also dedicate for those beings who transmit these teachings, beings such as His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, our teachers. May they have long lives. May their wishes be fulfilled without obstacle. And may we also find perfect conditions ourselves to be able to practice Dharma. May we be able to extract the essence of this precious human rebirth. May we attain all the realizations on the path. Ma ke pa na ke yuj, ke pa nya pa me pa ya, gong ne gong du pe wa shou. Ra wei go wei xin kan de, ben nan de wa ma lu xiu wei ne, chen ne a xie wang ten xin ga so di, sa pe a xie de ma du ten ju qi. Thank you.